Good evening. My name is Scott Hinton, and I'm here to talk about the single most important thing you can do to make sure your children stay healthy. I'm here to talk about getting your children vaccinated and making sure all their shots are up to date. First, a word about me. I work for the Arkansas Department of Health, and one of my jobs is to make sure that the citizens of Arkansas realize the importance of vaccinating their children. Vaccines have been called one of the greatest triumphs of medicine. The Centers for Disease Control estimates that vaccinating children in the 20 years from 1994 to 2014 saved the lives of 732,000 children. One of the biggest killers of the past, smallpox, has been eradicated because of vaccination. The last case of naturally occurring smallpox in the United States was in 1949, and the last case anywhere in the world was in Somalia in 1977. In fact, children are no longer vaccinated against smallpox. Vaccinations work. Polio is another killer that has been eradicated in the United States. When in the early 1950s, more than 16,000 people were paralyzed annually from polio, and more than 1,800 died yearly from polio. We forget how serious these diseases used to be and how deadly. The importance of vaccinations has great personal significance to me. Both of my grandmothers were horribly sick with diseases we are now protected against. My father's mother, Evelyn Hinton, spent most of her life with only partial vision in one eye because she had a bad case of measles as a young child in rural Mississippi. And my mother's mother, Verna Buell, almost died of polio in the 1930s in a small town on the Arizona border with Mexico. She was sick for weeks at the age of 10 and had to learn to walk again. It was so deadly that no one, not even her mother, was allowed to go into the room to comfort her when she had a high fever for days. We have forgotten how serious childhood illnesses once were. But the good news is, we live in an age when so many childhood diseases can be prevented, and in a country that makes them available to all children, and science that tells us that when most children are vaccinated, all are safer. First, the facts. The Centers for Disease Control recommends that children get 29 doses of 9 different vaccines from ages 0 to 6. The CDC also recommends that children 6 months and older get flu shots every year. These shots protect children against hepatitis B, rotavirus, diphtheria, tetanus, pertussis, Haemophilus influenza type B, pneumonia, polio, measles, mumps, rubella, varicella, which is chickenpox, and hepatitis A. Between the ages of 7 and 18, the CDC recommends children also be vaccinated against 4 strains of meningococcal, which is meningitis, and HPV, which is the human papillomavirus. The good news is these vaccines work. Fact 1. Vaccines keep kids healthy and save lives. For example, according to Shot at Life, a United Nations foundation, vaccinating children to protect them against the measles worldwide has meant a 79% decline in childhood deaths from measles. The statistics are even more inspiring in the United States, where, in the year 2000, health authorities declared measles had been eliminated, which means for 12 months there was no continuous transmission of the disease. In 2016, there were only 70 reported cases of measles anywhere in the U.S. In the first 3 months of this year, only 28 cases have been reported, and most of those people had not been vaccinated, and some of them contracted the disease from an international traveler. Fact 2. It's extremely rare for a child to have a bad reaction to vaccinations. More than 10 million vaccines are given in this country every year just to children ages 2 months to 6 months. Yet the bad reactions are few and far between. The CDC is responsible for investigating and keeping track of what are called adverse events resulting from vaccinations, and VAERS, The Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System, makes the data available. VAERS data indicates that only about 1,700 adverse events are classified as serious each year, which is less than 1/4 of 1% of the immunizations given. Fact 3. Most organizations of doctors and scientists agree vaccinations are safe. Those who want you to get your children vaccinated include the American Medical Association, the Academy of Pediatrics, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and the World Health Organization. There are some other great benefits of vaccinations I want to mention. First, vaccines save time and money. When your kids are sick, you lose time from work and have a lot of doctor bills. Second, vaccines given today protect the children of tomorrow. When unvaccinated pregnant women used to get rubella, for example, their children could have birth defects. So vaccines even protect the unborn. Third, there is a fascinating benefit to having the majority of a population immunized. It's referred to as herd immunity. When a certain percentage of the population is vaccinated, there is very little chance of an outbreak, which means the people who really cannot be vaccinated, such as newborns, sick children, or those undergoing chemotherapy, are also protected from an outbreak. The herd is literally protecting them because the immunity of the herd is preventing an outbreak. Therefore, the facts are positive. Vaccines prevent diseases, and adverse reactions are few. Equally important, vaccinations protect the sick and unborn and save time and money. So, what's the fuss? Well, there are a lot of individuals who mistrust the government, the CDC, and the pharmaceutical companies. Others just don't want the government to tell them how to raise their children. But every state in the country requires children to be immunized before they start kindergarten. Most states allow parents to refuse to vaccinate their children, but some no longer allow parents to opt out. Dr. Ben Carson, a well-known neurosurgeon who has recently been appointed to a cabinet post, said, "Although I strongly believe in individual rights and the rights of parents to raise their children as they see fit, I also recognize that public health and public safety are extremely important in our society. Certain communicable diseases have been largely eradicated by immunization policies in this country, and we should not allow those diseases to return by foregoing safe immunization programs for philosophical, religious, or other reasons when we have the means to eradicate them." In fact, in recent years, well-known Republicans and Democrats have come out in favor of immunizing children. Republican Senator Marco Rubio from Florida told NBC in 2015, "Absolutely all children in America should be vaccinated." Likewise, Senator Barbara Boxer and Dianne Feinstein in the 2015 letter asked California public health officials to rethink exemptions, boldly stating, "We believe there should be no such thing as a philosophical or personal belief exemption." At the heart of the debate is a fear that vaccines cause autism. This fear stems from an article by Brian Wakefield, published in 1998, that alleged the MMR shot, the vaccine for measles, mumps, and rubella, was causing pervasive development disorder, an early name for autism. Wakefield blamed thimerosal, a form of mercury, used as a preservative in the vaccine. In the years since that time, researchers and reporters have proven that Wakefield was paid to falsify reports by lawyers who wanted to sue the drug companies that made the vaccines. The British Journal of Medicine has since published articles saying that 5 of the 12 children examined had delayed development before being vaccinated. In 2011, Wakefield lost his license to practice medicine. As a result, however, thimerosal was almost entirely removed from vaccines, and yet the rate of children being diagnosed with autism has not gone down as a result. In fact, since 1998, there have been 7 major studies that found no link between the MMR shot and autism. Some hypothesize that the link is coincidental because parents notice the signs of autism in their child at about the same time that the MMR is given. I say that thimerosal was almost entirely removed because as a preservative it is still found in multi-dose vials of flu vaccine that some doctors or clinics might purchase. Flu vaccine is cheaper this way in a big vial because there is less packaging, but a big vial needs a preservative. However, the Arkansas Department of Health since 2008 has only purchased single-dose vials of flu vaccine. That means the flu vaccine is preloaded into a syringe that is disposed of once the shot is given, so it doesn't need the thimerosal preservative. The single-dose vaccines purchased by the state health department are distributed to all the county health departments and to about 350 private clinics which participate in the Vaccines for Children program in Arkansas. Therefore, the vast majority of immunizations administered in Arkansas, including the flu shots, are considered thimerosal free. If you go to a private doctor, you can ask whether he or she purchases the multi-dose flu vaccine or single-dose shots. So if thimerosal is not the issue, what is? Those who call every vaccine a cocktail of poison make several arguments. First, those who oppose vaccines say even without thimerosal, there remain many harmful chemicals and metals in vaccines, such as formaldehyde, nickel, and aluminum. However, proponents say these ingredients are only harmful in large quantities. In fact, you can find more aluminum in baby formula and even in breast milk, and one of the country's leading spokespersons on health issues, Dr. Paul Offit, says children are regularly exposed to heavy metals because they are all around us. Second, anti-vaxxers say they don't trust the pharmaceutical industry and point to various drugs no longer in use, such as Vioxx in 2007. The company that produced and sold Vioxx agreed to pay damages to thousands of Americans who took Vioxx and were harmed. Anti-vaxxers point out that even some vaccinations have been taken off the market. For example, in 1999, the rotavirus vaccine was pulled because of fears that it was linked to bowel obstruction. The anti-vaxxers are correct that there are some doctors out there who will tell you vaccines are dangerous. It is also true that the Vaccine Injury Compensation Program has paid out more than $2 billion to more than 2,300 families since it was created by Congress in 1986. In those cases, the panel determined vaccines harmed those individuals. But here's an interesting comparison. The measles vaccine can cause bleeding in 1 in 30,000 children. But if those same children get measles, 1 in 2,000 die. Another statistic, 1 in 14,000 people get seizures from the DTaP vaccine for diphtheria, tetanus, and pertussis, but 1 in 10 cases of tetanus is fatal. The dangers from vaccines are minimal, but the dangers from childhood diseases are very real. Another argument made by anti-vaxxers is that the unvaccinated children are physically and mentally healthier than vaccinated children. They point to studies of 12,000 children which indicate vaccinated children have more chronic illnesses. My question is, how many of those 12,000 children, vaccinated or unvaccinated, would even be alive without vaccines and the herd immunity I mentioned earlier, which protects the unvaccinated from many diseases? If the anti-vax movement grows, that herd immunity may cease to exist. The percentage who need to be vaccinated to achieve herd immunity varies from disease to disease because some diseases have a high rate of transmission, meaning one case can cause several more. Because measles is highly contagious, scientists say when trying to achieve herd immunity, more than 95% of the population needs to be vaccinated, and the unvaccinated in America are not evenly distributed. There are certain communities with higher percentages of unvaccinated citizens than there are found in other locations. As a parent, you may not want to count on the herd immunity. If all your friends and neighbors refuse to vaccinate their children, you may not be safe. A professor of nursing from Pennsylvania explains that vaccines are what's called primary protection. She states, when primary prevention techniques are implemented, You see nothing because nothing happens. That's given a false sense of security to people. No one likes having the government tell us what to do, but do we really want our children at risk? Keep in mind that many of the parents of today's children barely remember 9/11, much less a time when children were paralyzed or died from common diseases. And if you think about it, we have a lot of safety laws that restrict our individual freedom. For example, requiring parents to use car seats takes away your right to hold and comfort your child in the car. The need to vaccinate all children is so important that earlier this year a bipartisan group of House and Senate leaders who work on the various health committees in Washington, D.C. signed a February 2017 letter endorsing vaccines. The letter was signed by Republicans from Tennessee, Oregon, and Texas, and Democrats from Washington, New Jersey, and Texas. It said, already this year, states and communities around the country have reported outbreaks of measles, mumps, and whooping cough. The reasons for each outbreak vary, but we know that there are increasing trends around the country that have led to lower vaccination rates in some communities, allowing outbreaks of infectious diseases to take hold with increasing frequency. The letter continued, the science is clear. FDA licensed vaccines are proven to be safe and effective and save the lives of both of those who receive them and vulnerable individuals around them. As members of Congress, we have a critical role to play in supporting the availability and use of vaccines to protect Americans from deadly diseases. You, too, as parents, play an important role in protecting your children and all Americans from deadly diseases. Don't forget, don't delay, and don't be left out. Get your children vaccinated. My grandmother, when she had polio, remembered asking her mother if she was going to die. Through a closed door, keeping her distance because of the risk of contamination, my grandmother never forgot her mother's answer. Her mother answered, do you want to live? You have to want to live. I ask you tonight, do you want your children to live long, healthy lives? Please keep your children's vaccinations up to date. Thank you so much for having me here today to discuss this important issue. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them at this time. Thank you.